Hello, BookTube. Going on 100 years ago, a great writer who's now almost entirely forgotten named Rose Macaulay. She's known now mostly for one book, The Towers of Trebizond. But she wrote a whole lifetime of great books. A wonderful, wonderful writer of fiction and nonfiction. And going on 100 years ago, she wrote a wonderful essay, little squib of a thing, about the pleasures of book catalogs, getting book catalogs in the mail. And that's going to be largely unknown. A strange concept to most of you, I would imagine, because book catalogs have sort of gone away. It used to be that they were a thing into which people put a lot of work, inventiveness, art, playfulness. All book sellers, used bookstores, new bookstores, remainder houses, they all made catalogs that had order forms and little paragraph descriptions all the way down the double column page of all the wares that you could tempt yourself with. And I used to get probably 50 of them over the course of a year, from all kinds of places that don't exist anymore. And in many bookstores where I have worked, I helped to create the catalog. And you don't get them anymore. There's no such thing as a book catalog anymore. I was working at Barnes & Noble. Those of you who don't live in America, it's the one remaining big bookstore retail chain here in America. And I was working at Barnes & Noble when they decided to discontinue their own catalog, which was full of goodies. I don't really understand it. But of course, it's the internet that did it. And that's a shame, because Rose Macaulay's essay about luxuriating on your bed with book catalogs was spot on the money. It was a sinfully pleasant thing to do, especially since it contained a large amount of. It was the physical printed paper version of your Amazon wish list. It contained a large amount of wishful thinking, and that made it all the more pleasant, because the Crocs and Bartanos catalog would come to your apartment. Whether you were flush with book buying cash or poor as a church mouse, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter for browsing the catalog and dreaming about the stuff that was inside it. And I miss that. But I do have the closest equivalent that I'm probably going to get for the rest of my life, because I'm a prolific book reviewer. So I get catalogs from publishers. We've seen them before on this channel. We've gone through them before. And I thought we'd do it again, because today I got the spring and summer catalog for Harvard University Press. Isn't that lovely? Harvard University Press is, of course, one of the best endowed, one of the oldest, and one of the best academic presses anywhere in the world. And, you got to give 3 cheers for academic presses, because they're not worried about the vicissitudes of the market. They can publish genuine scholarship. They can publish books that are going straight to libraries, that aren't even expected to earn their keep. And those books are valuable. So I get catalogs from all the major academic publishers, and I love them all. I do more their books are straight up my alley. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Random House and Houghton Mifflin and W.W. Norton, my beloved W.W. Norton, which sort of straddles the line. They have a commercial arm, and they have an extensive academic arm. But the academic presses are right up my alley. They never disappoint me. So they furnish, in addition to lots of enjoyment, ample fodder for review, if you're a reviewer like me who does mostly nonfiction. And this is the reason I was reminded of Rose Macaulay, is because look at this. Somebody put care and effort into making this thing pretty. So I thought we'd go through it just as a video, just because you can't really get rid of me. So we'll go through. They start off with their major offerings for the spring and summer, and then the middle of the catalog is the more eggheady academic stuff. And then they finish it off with paperback reprints, the stuff that they're doing for paperback reprints. I promise not to drag you through every book, but I thought 10 minutes of your time is not that much. So we can both see what's coming out, because I intentionally withheld looking through this so that we could do it together. The first one is by Yasha Monk, The People versus Democracy, Why Our Freedom is in Danger and How to Save It, which is Probably not going to be Steve's thing. Oh my god. All right, well, the next one is Steve's thing. It's called Pandora's Box. It is by Jorn Linhart, who is a professor of history at the University of Freiburg. Oh my god. And it is a 1,000-page history of World War I. So, I will be reviewing it. I don't know where, but I will not let such a thing pass, of course. Wonderful. Oh, that's fantastic. A 1,000-page history of First World War. That is great. Then we've got a book called Not Enough, about human rights in the world. Oh, 500-page book. Looks like a combination of biography and analysis of Zbigniew Brzezinski, the grand strategist, national security advisor to President Jimmy Carter, and a sort of gray eminence behind the scenes of the Cold War for a long time, before and after Jimmy Carter. A titanic figure and somewhat sinister. I wonder if this is by Justin Vaisi. That's not how to pronounce it. He's French. He's a French historian of the United States, and this is translated from the French. No way to know what stance he will take on Brzezinski, but if it's purely adulatory, then it's inaccurate. But that's great. He's a big, complex, fascinating subject. I would love it if this book did him justice. That would be great. Book about the paramilitary, the all-important order form. The Law of Blood, Thinking and Acting as a Nazi, by another French historian at the Sorbonne. 400 pages, okay. David Studdard, who's a classical historian I really like, is doing a book called Nemesis, which is the cover of this catalog, about Alcibiades. About Alcibiades and the fall of Athens. That should be fun. It's only 400 pages long. The Known Citizen, a new study at 500 pages of the concept of privacy. Very good. Very interesting. Our Universe, by a physicist named Joe Dunkley, which is an astronomer's guide to what we know so far. I never know what to make of books like that. A collection of essays about the political philosophy of Martin Luther King Jr. How fascinating. Is it big? 400 pages. Not bad. Globalists, The End of Empire and the Birth of Neoliberalism. Okay, all right. Not exactly for Steve. China at War, The Muslim Brotherhood and the West. Superbugs, An Arms Race Against Bacteria. Right up my alley. That's 200 pages. Do you mind just sullenly eating things while I'm making a video? Especially since all the things belong to me. Nothing here belongs to you. All right, moving on here. Oh, okay, so a book called Waste of a Nation, about garbage in India, which you might not think would be a promising subject, but if you live in India or have been to any sizable city in India, you'll know. Indians have, they corner the market, as we say here in America, on intelligence, friendliness, hospitality, food. But there are some things, I mean, it's true with any country, there are some things that they haven't quite mastered yet. And sanitation is one of those things. I say it with all the love in the world. I lived in India, but still. In urban America, we're kind of sanitation obsessed. So maybe I'm looking at it in the wrong perspective. Oh, wow. Oh, John McNally has a new history of Vatican I. Not the famous Vatican II that everybody knows about, but the church council that was held in the 19th century, called Vatican I. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't read a history of Vatican I in years. Let's see what we have here. The World Inequality Report, 2018. That will make for grim reading. Top Incomes in France in the 20th Century. Yet another French intellectual. That's also going to make grim reading. The Rise of Rome by Catherine Lomas, which is about Rome up to the consolidation of empire. 400 pages long. Okay. The The Price of Aid, Economic Cold War in India. So India comes up again. Very good. Oh my. Oh my. There's a new book. Wow, look at that. It's by Matthew Bowman, simply called Christian. Subtitle is The Politics of a Word in America. It's by an author who did a very good book on the Mormon faith. It's only 280 pages long. Really shouldn't be. 280 pages should be the length of your endnotes for a book on Christian in America. But even so, can't wait. Fantastic. Biology professor at the University of Southern California doing a new book called The New Chimpanzee. Another study of chimpanzees. I just finished an enormous one on chimpanzees and human evolution that was very good. Parts of it were very good. The Devil's Music, How Christians Inspired, Condemned, and Embraced Rock and Roll. That's another Christian book. Interesting. Let's see here. The new book on the famous statue of Nefertiti. Which is much smaller than you might think. You've seen reproductions of it endlessly, but if you actually go and look at it, it's much smaller than you think. For it to be one of the quintessential ancient Egyptian faces, it and the tomb mask of King Tutankhamun are sort of quintessential Egyptian faces. You'd think you'd just automatically expect it to be bigger. I expected you to be taller, Nefertiti. Okay, another new book, a book called Jesus in Asia. Boy, a bit of a religious drift going through here. New history of diplomacy. New history of one particular Russian voyage. Universe in Creation, a new understanding of the Big Bang and the emergence of life. Oh, please, Harvard, please. Let's not be giving a platform to religious fanatics. I gotta dig into this one because I don't like the sound of that at all. We know the universe has a history, but does it also have a story of self-creation to tell? Yes, in Roy Gould's account, he offers a compelling narrative of how the universe, with no instruction other than its own laws, evolved billions of galaxies and gave rise to life, including humans, who've been trying for millennia to comprehend it. Excellent. Okay, I was worried for nothing. Shouldn't have been. A new short guide called Impeachment, a Citizen's Guide. No one in America is going to need that guide. I wish they were, but they aren't. Book on Mexican migration. The Great Rift, Literacy, Numeracy, and the Religion-Science Divide. Another book on religion. Wow. Oh, and the Republic of Arabic Letters. I think we saw that on this channel. That's great. Privacy's Blueprint, another book on privacy, subtitled The Battle to Control the Design of New Technologies. Wow. All right, so more on privacy. Very good, a fascinating subject. Can't wait to read more of it. Wow, a Tufts University professor of religion, Heather Curtis, has written a book called Holy Humanitarians, American Evangelicals and Global Aid. Yet more Christianity, another study of Christianity. And the next one, Catholic Modern, the challenge of totalitarianism and the remaking of the church. Amazing. I'm not complaining at all. I could read about Christianity all the livelong day. It's just odd that it would all be grouped together, especially since I don't think I'm in the religious section of the catalog. It doesn't look like there even is one. New book on the birth of the East India Company, but it's only 370 pages long. So I automatically wonder what its gist must be, because the author could have an exceptional gift for concision, but 370 pages for the birth of the East India Company, it's an enormous subject with enough records to fill Rose Bowl Stadium. Another book on neoliberalism. 2 more books on immigration. Okay. The People's Zion. South Africa, the United States, and a transatlantic faith healing movement. More religion. Wow. Okay. Well, I will read it. Absolutely. Okay. And then it looks like we're moving into the more scholarly side of things, which is, it's always tricky. I make a lot of requests in the request form from this section. But the books don't get the distribution, and they don't usually get reviewed elsewhere, and it's hard to think about a general audience for these things. Like, for instance, there's a thing here, an anthology called An Emerging Modern World, 1750 to 1870, edited by Sebastian Conrad and Jurgen Osterhammel, who did a great, great standalone book. And it's 1,000 pages long. See, I don't know where the audience will be for that. I am the audience for that, but I don't know who else would be. I imagine it'll go straight to schools. A study of the use of the housefly in scientific experiments. Where are you going to get Random House to give you money to do that? Especially since the author's going to need regular infusions of money to get the book done, to sustain the author while the book is being written. You need an academic press to do something like that, and the result might be important. So that's why I love them. Let's see here. Yeah, we're into very abstruse stuff here, stuff that would bore you even to hear about. I would imagine, if you're not bored already. I'm having a ball because I go through these things and absorb what I'm going to do. I sort of formulate, quasi-mental plans. Oh, and here we have the imprints from Harvard University Press, one of which is the I Tatti Library of Renaissance Classics, and they're doing. I Tatti Manetti was an Italian humanist who broke a lot of ground, and I just recently got a book of his. They actually did a volume on a book of his called Against the Jews and Against the Gentiles, which I would have thought they would just let languish, never to be translated into English, because the first part of the title makes it seem a little explosive. But nope, they did it, and I was glad they did it. It reminded me that Manetti is a very good Latinist. And the book they're doing next is on human worth and excellence, which was one of his most famous works when he was alive. It's an amazing humanist tract of a type that I don't think I've ever read it in English. I'd be curious to know. The translator is Brian Copenhaver. I'd be curious to know what he does with it. Then another imprint of theirs is the Loeb Classical Library, where they have the Greek and Latin classics. You have the Greek on one side and the Latin on one side and English on the other. And the Latin this time around are the Tragedies of Seneca and another volume of the Roman historian Livy. Gesundheit. Who I love. And a Greek classic that they're doing is Quintus Smyrnius, the post-Homerica. The Quintus Smyrnius was an ancient writer who decided to continue the Iliad. He decided to put in what Homer left out, and the Quintus Smyrnius is so much fun to read. I wonder if this is a new translation. This edition of the Post-America replaces the earlier Loeb Classical edition by A.S. Way with an updated text based on that of new. Oh, it's a new translation. So wow. Okay, so I think probably out of 3,000 subscribers, there's not one of you who's going to know what I'm talking about at this point. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because my bookish friends in real life don't either. These are the moments when Steve just goes into his own world. But the way translation of Quintus Smyrnius, you're a good girl. She's not really a good girl. She's been terrible today. But the way translation of Quintus Smyrnius is wonderful. It is one of the very few English translations in a Loeb Classical Library edition that's actually worth the price of admission. Usually, you go to the Loeb for the original. For the if you can read the Latin or the Greek, you go to the Loeb's if you're, for instance, reviewing a new translation of Homer or a new translation of Suetonius or something like that. You go to your Loeb in order to see exactly what the translator is working with and what liberties they're taking. But most people don't go, over the course of 100 years, most people haven't gone to the Loeb Classical Library editions for the English. The English translations have often been accused of being simple trots. They're just artless, bland, flat-footed stuff. And the way translation of Quintus Smyrnius was not. It was delightful, which is why I wrote a novel. I wrote the story of the Trojan War in the form of a novel called Troy War. I don't think anyone watching my channel has ever read Troy War. It's not like anything else I've ever written, and that's you notice it right from the beginning. I have no idea where Troy War came from in the dark recesses of my psyche, but it was a joy to write. The only writing that I've ever done that actually caused me to miss subway stops because it was pouring out of me onto the loose leaf paper. And I loved the Way translation of Quintus Smyrnius so much that I dedicated Troy War to Way. And now they're retiring it. So you'll never be able to buy it again in a retail store. So the Quintus Smyrnius is getting a new translation into English. That is... okay, well, it's bound to happen. Translations change. Let's see here. That was a long digression. Let's move on, see what we can find here. Whole bunch of new stuff on the literature and poetry of Japan and China. Very nice. Pages and pages of it. That's great. Look like a brace of books on ancient Islam. That's very good as well. Then we move into the paperback section. Some Harvard paperbacks. Look at the mess she made. Goodness gracious. Some of the Harvard paperbacks, the stuff that they reprint, I automatically, because of my profession, I automatically look at the blurbs. I automatically look to see if maybe the widespread attention that the book got is maybe part of the reason why they're reprinting it in paperback, because most of their stuff they don't reprint. And one of the things is Marco Santaga's biography of Dante, which did get reviewed everywhere. I reviewed it, I think, for Open Letters. And when I read it, I thought, well, okay, this is very good, and it looks very good. It's a beautiful edition, but I don't see it getting lots of play. But when it comes to something like this, I didn't think it was an extraordinary book as a life of Dante. I've read better lives of Dante in English. But the thing with a book like this is that a lot of times the larger journals, the New York Review of Books, the London Review of Books, even the TLS, the writer will use it as an opportunity to simply talk about Dante and only barely mention the book. So, and you never know when that's going to happen. If you've got somebody in your stable of writers who's really good at writing about Mary Shelley, then it doesn't matter if the new biography of Mary Shelley or the new study of Frankenstein is any good. You want the piece from them. You don't necessarily want a dutiful point-by-point review of that book. And I think that was true of this Dante life, but it's covered in blurbs. So that's great. That's fantastic. The Helen Vendler, The Ocean, the Bird, and the Scholar. I didn't really... The TLS reviewed it. The New York Times reviewed it. New York Review of Books reviewed it. She has lots of fans. I'm one of them. I didn't so much care for a lot that was in that book, but that's great, and I'm glad it's getting a paperback. That's fantastic. Peter Brown's The Ransom of the Soul, about the role of wealth in the afterlife in early Christianity. What do you do in early Christianity in order to, so to speak, bribe the judge? If you're extremely wealthy, how do you guarantee that you're going to go to heaven? Is there any way to maybe grease the wheels? A very good book. Oh, goodness gracious. Robert Orsi's book, History and Presence, is being reprinted with a different cover. Oh, I like the cover of the hardcover. The paperback has a completely different cover. Oh, and it has a blurb from yours truly. A fiercely inquisitive book on the heart of Roman Catholicism. It was a very, very good book. Wow, that's great. Okay, wonderful. Oh, great. A paperback of Robert Ferguson's Inferno, which is all about the American prison system. Absolutely relentlessly grim reading, but so good. The writer is so angry, and he keeps it under icy control the whole time. It's amazing performance. And it got reviewed in the Weekly Standard and the Atlantic. That's great. Oh, it also has it has a little tag. I don't know if you can read it. It says an Open Letters Monthly Best Nonfiction Book of the Year. Oh, okay, that's a little tricky because it was the best It's the best nonfiction book of the year for my book blog, Steve Reads, which is hosted on Open Letters Monthly. But it isn't. It's my book blog, not Open Letters. It's not speaking for Open Letters. Open Letters has never done a books of the year type thing. Okay, well, it's a minor thing. I don't know if it'll be on the book or not. But it's a distinction. It's a distinction worth making, and it's a distinction that you run into. It's a problem you run into if you have a personal blog located on a website if Mary Beard says something incendiary on her blog on the TLS website. Well, what do you do? What do you do with that? I mean, I understand why as the 21st century progresses, people are moving their blogs away from such places instead of towards them, because it creates problems just like this. Inferno was not an Open Letters Monthly nonfiction book of the year. It was one of my nonfiction books of the year. But anyway, it's well worth your time. Oh my God! In terms of recommending the book, I think I'm the only one at Open Letters who read it. But I'd be willing to bet that if anybody else at Open Letters read it, they would second me in recommending it to you. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. If I remember, I'll leave my review down below, or the list. Why, more religious stuff. Oh, and that ends the catalog. Wow. Lots of religion this time around. Very nice. So the spring and summer for Harvard University Press, anyway, is going to be heavy on the religion, with lots of books on immigration, lots of books on privacy, and their usual smattering of international titles that I can't wait to get to. So there you go. So it's a little vicarious walk through the Harvard catalog, and I'm just hideously long, so and because it's self-indulgent. So I'll wrap up for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.